officially started. Okay, I think we're good to go. Hello, everybody. I am Eric, and with me today is an author, scholar, werewolf aficionado. This is my favorite horror with Somer Canon. Welcome, Somer.
Hi, and thank you for having me back to talk about my favorite monster.
Thank you for being here. And to get started, what's up? What's going on?
Honestly, the honest answer is nothing. Nothing is going on right now. I'm just reading a lot, trying to, last year I was concentrating on werewolves so much, only reading werewolf books. My TBR pile got out of control. Like, seriously, it's going to kill me. It's going to fall on me and murder me. So I've been trying to work through that, reading all kinds of different stuff. And that's just kind of what's going on right now. Trying to maintain a reading pile that won't murder me.
Well, I literally have piles of books that occasionally fall over. Fortunately, they haven't fallen on me. I had a bookshelf collapse because of all the books on top of it. On the very top, I had to put a 2x4 in between two shelves to hold the top up because it's a cheap-ass bookshelf. But I understand the dangers of having too many books in a pile. So any highlights right now from what you're reading?
Honestly, so far this year, maybe the best book, the one that hit me the hardest, was Brimstone by Cherie Priest. I'd never read her before. I see her name everywhere though, and I saw it at a used bookstore actually, and I grabbed it up. And I can assure you, I will be grabbing more of her titles. This book blew me away just because it was extremely well written. It was a dual POV kind of thing. And that's one of those technical quandaries that can either be done really, really well and it reads as perfection, or it can be confusing. And she did it so, so well.
Well, I wish I could remember the name of the book or two books because she has that duology of Lizzie Borden. Mm-hmm. That's cosmic horror.
Oh.
And I can't remember the name, so it's like it's the story of Lizzie Borden, but the reason that she did or may or may not have done what she did had to do with not her being crazy, but sort of trying to prevent a cosmic horror type
that
of
sounds
thing.
Amazing, actually.
I got my phone right here. Let's see if we can look it up, because that's what people want to see on a video is someone Googling on their phone. But and I know, of course, she does, the steampunk stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. That's just Bone Shaker, yeah. Chapelwood is the second one, I believe. Or is that the first one? Maplecroft and Chapelwood are the two ones. And they have like let's see if we can show off the cover. Again, nothing better than the Borden Dispatches. There you go.
Well, that's a gorgeous cover.
Yeah, what's it doing? Yes, they're great covers, great books, really good stuff. If you're looking for more of her stuff to read,
I am actually. So
check those out.
I will do that.
Well, you had her book on your latest video,
mm-hmm.
as of this recording. And I was thinking one of the nice things, I think, for people like you and I who are independent contractors is that we can just promote the stuff we like.
Yep.
We don't have publishers or you might, but I don't have publishers or anybody sending me their books. I'm under no obligation to review something if I didn't like it.
I'm not under obligation to review. I get asked to write blurbs. That's when you're an author, you get asked to write blurbs. I think that's a great gig, actually. Like, I'm always happy especially if it's someone I know who's tried and tested with me, I already like their stuff. It's like I will make time for this person 100%. I also like helping newer people who they're like, this is my second book. Will you blurb it? Absolutely. Um, but not to review. I wouldn't do that because I know, knowing other reviewers, I know that authors can tend to be a weensy bit rude to reviewers.
Well, it's funny because Alma Katsu, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in her last newsletter, asked people about blurbs. Do they bother reading them? Does it actually affect their buying choices? And apparently, it does for a lot of people. It does for me. If I see a book that by an author I'm not familiar with, or that I might normally pass by, but I see one or two or three authors that I really, really admire saying it's fantastic, I'll usually give it a chance.
Yep. And me too. I look for blurbs.
But uh, after we're done recording, I do want to talk to you a little bit about favorite authors and some things. But
Okay.
um, I don't want to say while we're recording. Um, but yeah, it's nice to not, if I'm not liking a book, I don't have to finish it. I'm not obligated. Although I hear, reviewers saying you're not obligated to finish a book you don't like, and you don't have to review a book just because it was sent to you. But
Yeah.
back when I did get books from like Sam Hain and a few other places, I always felt obligated to read it and review it because it was sent to me.
Yeah.
But it's nice. My whole thing is I want to promote the stuff that I like.
Yeah. And the way we do it, I like how we're a little scattershot about it because we'll talk about books that are older. On social media, you're seeing books that are either on pre-order right now or just now out, getting all the reviews. And we're going back and visiting books that are a couple years old at this point and have essentially been forgotten by social media. We're giving them a new injection of attention. And I think what we're doing is a good thing.
I'd like to think so. I don't know if you're familiar with Kaylee Dobbs and Happy
Yeah.
Goat Horror.
Yep.
She just read 63 books in May,
I
which is
saw that.
insane. But yeah, and she wants to promote small press
Hmm.
and small press authors. And that's what I like to see. Yes, I want to know if, a book is no good, although, I mean, it's subjective, of course. But I like to see people promoting things.
Yeah.
That's what I
I'm
want
just here for the positive. If I don't like a book, I don't talk about it. And it does happen. And I do understand that art is subjective. I do understand it. I always say it's a me thing. It's not the book, it's me. And I'm okay with letting it stand at that. I I think I have another layer of it's complicated with me because I'm also an author.
to.
I'm not here. I know what goes into this, especially on the indie scene. It's a blood sport trying to get any sort of attention onto your titles. And I'm not here to put any stink on it.
Right. And I don't know. Yeah, just support each other.
Yep.
That's that's the way to go. And like I said, if I don't, generally, there's been a couple of books that I've rated like 2 stars on Goodreads
Hmm.
that I've reviewed simply because I thought um, people might pick them up for a particular reason. They were both well, one was a novelization and one was sort of a novelization, but a retelling of an old movie
Okay.
by the writer director of the movie. And so I thought people would, just because of the name, pick them up. And I was like, but I don't think they're that good. I think I should let people know that they might be very disappointed. So, but generally, unless I rate it at least, 3 stars, which is I liked it.
Yeah.
Excuse
I
me.
don't think there's anything wrong with a person who's just a reader being honest about what they thought about a book. Bad reviews don't necessarily deter me from books, and honestly, good reviews don't necessarily sell me on a book.
Mhm.
It's a very complicated web of things that really talk me into it. I'm not a hard sell anyway, though, but there are certain subgenres that I'm a little more picky about. And I have my trusted people who I'll go to and be like, what did you think about this book? And they'll be like, you will hate it. Never mind.
Well, I mean, I don't care how many people praise, say, a new Dean Koontz book. I'm not going to pick it up and read it. Not a fan. I was for a long time. I'm not now, and I have so many, these deadly piles of books waiting to be read that I can forego the new. Again, I'm going to use that example, Dean Koontz. I think he'll survive me saying I'm not a fan.
He doesn't need you. That's fine. He's a big name.
Wow,
He'll be
that's
fine.
kind of full. I loved him for a while.
I need to get into his older stuff because I hear this a lot. His older stuff is where it's at. I came in later and was like, woof, some of this stuff is really samey, samey, samey.
That's exactly why I stopped reading him. Although it's funny, the first book I ever read by him was Shattered, and I did not like it. So it was years before I read anything else. And then I read Watchers, which I loved.
I love that book.
So I went back and started reading all the old stuff, and I was really enjoying things like Phantoms and I think Darkfall. I read Lightning and all of those. And then I was like, well, maybe I was wrong about Shattered. Let me read it again. So I read that a second time, hated it still. But there got to a point around The Bad Place, I think is what it was, where they did start to just feel like he was writing the same thing over and over again. And so I was like, all right, I'm done. There's too much stuff to read. And then decades ago, I was dating somebody who recommended one of his books. So I did read that and was no, I was like, doesn't work for me. I think I'm done.
Yeah.
But that happens. I had a falling out with Stephen King for a while.
I I I have my struggles with Stephen King as well. He I will always love him and he will always be foundational to me as a reader, as a person, and as a creator, but we have our struggles. It's
There was a period of well over a decade, I think, where I didn't read any Stephen King. So there's a huge chunk of his library that I haven't touched.
same. I know, same. Like especially a lot of the newer stuff. Um, when my kids were little, there was no time to read. And I hadn't read in years, and I picked up Bag of Bones, and it completely reignited everything. That book lit me up. I loved it.
For me, it was The Outsider. After, I think after Misery, I stopped reading his stuff. I tried a few things, wasn't getting into them, went for the longest time, and then someone recommended Doomakey, and I read that, and I was like, eh. And then I read Under the Dome, which I really, really liked.
That's a great book.
But then just hadn't it. It didn't pull me back in. But then since The Outsider, I've gotten everything as it's come out, and with a couple of exceptions, have read everything immediately as it's come out. And The Outsider introduced me to Holly Gibney, who is my favorite Stephen King character. So I've read the first of the Bill Hodges trilogy. Went back and read that, and of course loved Holly last year. And I've already read his new one,
Which everybody's raving about. Everybody is raving about that one.
I haven't heard a lot of reviews or read a lot of reviews yet. I'm waiting to see what the number one story pick, like what people are going to pick as their favorite. I don't think it's going to be the same as mine.
I'm seeing a lot. I haven't read it. Rattlesnakes, is that what it's called? That's the one I'm seeing.
I'm assuming that's the one people are going to pick, and it's great. But there's another one that as I was reading it, I'm like, the first few stories, I'm like, all right, this is definitely 4 stars. absolutely. So far, we're at 4 stars. I really like this. And then I read this one particular story, and it was, all right, 5 stars. He's really going to have to tank everything after this for the rest
That's
of
the
the book.
thing. That's the thing about King is he writes these door stopper books, these gigantic, thick stories, and they're good. They really are. I love them, but I think he's at his best, and I think he's at his most intimidating as a writer when he's doing his short work. He's so good at it.
Well, I always used to say that much preferred his short work because he gets to the point.
Hmm.
The Mist, still my favorite story he's ever written. Um, and I just read it for the first time earlier this year and only gave it 4 stars.
That's okay.
And I do have a review up and discuss why it's only 4. I did have some problems with it. Not the
Sure.
thing that everybody has a problem with.
The thing that has so many of us going, why? Why did you put that in there?
I mean, yes, I do have a problem with it. I do question that. But I didn't even, I was like, I'm not even going to discuss that thing that everybody knows. Um, and I haven't recorded my review for the new one yet because I'm doing a buddy video review with somebody, and I'm just waiting
Oh,
for them to
great.
finish reading it because they were
Yay.
busy all of May doing something else and couldn't read it. Excuse me, getting parched already. Um, you, I think, I've lost track of time because I haven't been working. Uh, so the days just run together. Relatively recently, you had a book signing at
Yes,
Tex.
at Vortex. Yep.
How was that?
It was great. We were all set up. I did the signing with Wesley Southard, Stephen Kozanowski, and Wiley Young. And these are some of my best friends in the business. These are the guys that, yep,
Time to
very proud.
show off that book.
Yay. We actually sold quite a few copies of that book at the signing.
Well, you got me to buy 2 copies because I bought the first one and then I wanted this cover. So I
Oh,
bought this.
you got the original Silver Shamrock version?
I don't because I gave it to my nephew,
Oh.
but I did have it. That's the version I actually read, but I had to have that cover.
That's a great cover. Chris
Trying to
Enterline did that cover.
keep the glare off of it. Yes, great cover. Anyway, please continue the signing.
It was just great for everybody to get together. I keep forgetting how many writers and readers and people of the horror community are in this area, and they all showed up. There were a lot of hugs had, there were a lot of conversations, a lot of, oh my god, I haven't seen you in a couple years, I haven't seen you since before the pandemic. I mean, it felt like a family reunion, honestly.
Nice. I have to get out to Vortex at some point. Vortex comics and books. Is that what it's?
Yep.
Books and
Yep.
comics.
I think it's comics and books. If I'm
Um,
wrong, I'm in trouble.
Someone pointed out to me the irony of my situation. I've had all this free time because I was laid off from work and no money to do anything. Had plenty of time. I could have driven out there, spent a weekend, no money to do it.
Freaking
So
cruelty of life.
someday I'm going to check that place out. Got to check out those old comics.
Oh yeah, he's got a lot of comics.
Do you have any wild or crazy book signing anecdotes from any of your signings?
Oh, there's always something that happens at a signing. If you're there long enough, something weird happens. There's always a person who is maybe a little overstimulated by the crowd, and they'll stop at our table, and we just end up having a very strange conversation. We had one time we were doing a signing at a comic book convention, which is always weird because we don't like, it's usually Wesley Southern and I. We don't write comic books. Um, we're not really comic book readers, but we'll go do these comic book conventions because the tables are cheap, the crowds are nice, and they're curious about horror writers. We actually get a pretty good crowd there. And we went to this one comic book convention, and this woman stopped at our table, and poor thing, she just unloaded on us, cried, all of her, like, all of her stresses of the time. Like, she didn't have anybody to talk to in real life, and there were these two smiling faces, and that was who she went to. And we're just like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Like, there's only so much you can do. And she eventually, got herself back together and went on. But that's one of many. It's the one that comes out first. Then there was the woman who came up to us at a different comic book convention, and out of the blue, she picked up one of our books and looked at us and went, "My husband's dead, and people keep saying I lost him, but I know where he is." She put the book back down and walked away, and we were like,
Okay.
okay.
He's under the rose bushes. Interesting. I don't, there's a horror movie convention in my neck of the woods twice a year, and every once in a while there's an author there, and they just seem like a fish out of water. And because everybody's there for the movie stars and the movie props and the movie posters and everything. Jack Ketchum was there once,
Oh,
and I got to meet him.
oh,
But he didn't have a line. He didn't. I was stunned that his table was not crowded with people.
even movie fans should know who Jack Ketchum is.
Yeah, I got him. I pissed him off a little bit because I had the skeleton cover of
The Girl Next Door.
Girl Next Door, and he even when he signed it, he even wrote, "Oh, it's that cover again." And then I asked him for a special inscription, so it just says "Suck it, Lombardo," because at the time, your friend and mine, Mike Lombardo, did not have a copy of that edition. So I wanted to, rub it in his face a little bit. But I also bought facsimiles of, not Off Season. What's the second one?
Offspring?
Yes. Yeah, I think it was an Offspring. Yeah, I think it was Offspring. Because Off Season wasn't a movie. Offspring is, correct? Anyway, he had a facsimile of the book with all of his notes going through to turn it into a screenplay, and then a facsimile of the screenplay with all of the notes and everything.
That's nice.
I think it was for Offspring, because it's Offspring or Off Season, Offspring, and then The Woman, if I'm not mistaken. That's how that storyline goes. It's been years, so I don't remember. Pretty sure it was Offspring and not The Girl Next Door. Anyway, but yeah, the point was he was there signing things, selling things, and he wasn't just mobbed. Everybody wanted to see, the people from, I don't know, People Under the Stairs,
Yeah.
or whatever. But it's still a fun show, even though they don't. I'd rather see more authors there, but it is a horror movie thing.
Those conventions are still a lot of fun, though. I've gone to conventions as just a convention goer, and when I go to conventions as a vendor, I'm always surprised by the actors. They're so small. You watch these movies with these actors and actresses, like the actresses, I could put them on a keychain. They're so tiny. They're just these little itty bitty women. And then the actors themselves, you watch them be these imposing figures on screen, and they're as tall as me. It's just like, wow.
Not all of them are tiny. I was there with my nephew one time, and I wish I could remember his name, but he's the bad guy in Commando. He's in the Road Warrior, the guy with the mohawk in the Road Warrior, and he's in Weird Science.
Okay.
I
know what you're talking about.
And we met him, we talked to him, and shook his hand and everything. And as we're walking away, my nephew says, I can't believe I shook the hand of someone who's shaking hands with Arnold Schwarzenegger. But, and then there was another time I was there with my sister. I like to take different people with me every time I go. And one of the people walked by us and just said, hey, how you guys doing? And, we're like, hey, good, how you? And then when they walked off, my sister, I can't believe they talked to us. They're just people.
Yeah.
Just people.
Before he passed, I walked down a hallway and George Romero walked right by me. Now, he wasn't a tiny one. Like, when he walked by me, I had to look at him like this. Giant of a man. And he was going to, like, at those conventions, they usually kind of shield the famous people, keep them away from the rabble. But he was going to just the snack convention, the concession area where everybody goes. And he was like, no special attention for me.
Well, I was at a Horror Hound weekend. I think it was the one down in Cincinnati with a different nephew and his wife. She was his girlfriend at the time, but they're married now. And it was the last day. We were getting ready to leave, and there was a vendor set up that was selling these horror sodas. And you could either just buy a 6-pack of one flavor, or you could hand pick what you wanted them to put in the 6-pack. I had already gotten mine, so I was just standing back while they were trying to decide what flavors they wanted. And Kane Hodder was at a table right behind me, and apparently just decided to take a break. He just got up, walked over, and just started a conversation with me. And then again, my nephew's like, I can't believe you're over there talking to Kane Hodder. I'm like, yeah, why not? We're just both hanging out at a convention.
Yep.
But yeah, almost always a good time. And I haven't met anybody that I thought of as rude or negative. Well, there was one person that I felt overcharged incredibly.
Oh yeah, I've
and
seen
didn't
those.
have their prices out, so I was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, I just try and engage in conversation a little bit, and not just be like, here, sign this. But I like talking to the folks like you, authors and actors and things. We are going to get to Werewolf Summer, but before that, I wanted to take a look at some of your books. I got a nice little stack here. We already looked at Slaves to Gravity. And I went to your website, and because I was afraid I might be missing things. You do have 2 digital things listed on your website that I don't have. The Halloween one from last year.
Let me give you a little insider information.
Uh-huh.
Wait.
Okay. And then there was another one. And then there's a bunch of anthologies, and I have some of those, like Slash Her is right in front of me. But all the books I believe I have that are just your things. You want to go back in time. Look at that.
Now out of print.
And I just happened to be looking through some things on my YouTube channel and found out this was the last book I reviewed before taking 3 years off. Not because of this book. This wasn't the book that did it.
Stephen Kozanowski would say it was because of that book.
Oh, no. So we've got that, and we're going to jump around in time. We got this lovely book here, which was fantastic.
Oh,
French Press. I know that person who does that. And let's see, what else do we have? We got that. I haven't read all of these yet. And some lovely covers.
Lynn Hansen did that cover. Beautiful.
And this one as well.
Lynn Hansen also did that one.
And then I think your most recent.
That is the most recent, yes.
Yes. Lovely, lovely cover. Haven't read this one yet. Ooh, it's embossed.
Yeah.
It's even got a signature. Only 222 copies, according to the inside of my book.
Thank you to Thunderstorm Books for that.
Yes, lovely book. So there's just some of your work that I would recommend to people. So is Vicky Beautiful completely out of print there, or just that edition?
You can still get it in ebook, but physical copies are now gone.
Ooh, I'm glad I have one then. It was my introduction to your work. I was hearing things, good things, and I was like, yeah, little tiny book. I'll check that out, and yeah, blew me away. Fantastic. Anything you want to say about any of your books or your work?
No.
Okay.
I'll talk about other people's work till I'm blue in the face. This is where I kind of feel backed into a corner. It's like, I don't know.
All right. Well, let's talk about the Year of the Werewolf before we get to our main event. We'll talk in general about the Year of the Werewolf. So, why did you decide? I mean, this might be a very simple answer. Why did you decide to partake of the Year of the Werewolf?
Because werewolves are my favorite monster. And I feel like werewolves don't get, one, the attention, and two, the respect that other monsters tend to get. And I'm slightly horrified by that, not only because it's my favorite monster, but in literature and mythology, werewolves are some of the oldest. They predate vampires by centuries. And I just feel like they don't get a fair shake from movies or from books. So I was like, maybe my perception is wrong. Let's take a year and really look for books about werewolves and movies about werewolves and see if I can find some good stuff. And books wise, it was a really mixed bag. Movies wise, it was such a shit show. The movies were so awful. Uniformly just. So my friends and I, authors Matt Wilderson and Mary San Giovanni, we had a podcast called the Ghostwriters Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it eventually morphed into where we would watch bad horror movies on purpose so that we could then talk as storytellers about how they got it wrong and how they could have fixed it story-wise. And we kept running into these monster movies. And sometimes they were werewolves, sometimes they weren't. But we would watch these monster movies where it was very obvious that the movie makers, low budget has nothing to do with bad storytelling. You can tell a great story with a low budget. Some of our foundational movies, the movies that we love as horror fans from the 70s and 80s, they had shoestring budgets and they made something fantastic out of it because they relied on story. And we were watching these movies that completely neglected the story. All they wanted to do was get an air gun and do blood splatters and have women take their shirts off. And after a while, when you watch enough of those, like it's still fun and it's funny to laugh at them. But after a while, it starts to feel insulting as a viewer because it's like you don't even trust me enough to actually tell me a story in this. You're just showing me pictures of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that that was happening a lot with werewolves, and it still did. But I wanted to try to find the good ones so that I could make a big list because I kept seeing online, what are some good werewolf movies that aren't The Howling and Dog Soldiers? And people were coming up blank. So I was like, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to go out and I'm going to find movies. We can make a list. And I did. Despite all the stinkers, I got a great list of movies to watch. And I got a great list of books to recommend. So when people, post those, I can be like, I put a whole year into this. I got you. We've got books, we've got movies. European movie makers in particular really nail what it means to have not only a monster movie, but a body horror story where there's transformation and loss of self. they get it and they do it right. They do it perfectly. And it was a success ultimately. It was also just a very long year.
Is that what draws you to the werewolf? The body horror, the loss of self, or is there something else?
It is a lot of different things. It was something that I was drawn to as a child. I had one of those childhoods where, like I remember in kindergarten sitting in a circle and the teacher asking us, "What's your favorite movie?" And everybody's naming like Disney movies, and I said, "The Woman in White." And that's a horror movie, and the teacher was like, "You're allowed to watch that?" And it's like, yeah. And I was always allowed to watch horror movies as long as there wasn't too much sex in it. A little bit of sex, a little bit of nudity, fine, don't care. My parents did not care. And I've just always kind of been drawn to the werewolf, to the sort of torture of, I really love the ones that are from the point of view of the cursed person. I like the ones where it's a mystery and which person hears the werewolf, who's the one doing the murders. But I also really love the ones that are from the point of view of the werewolf realizing that they are losing themselves. There's something really poignant about that that hits me at my center.
Well, yeah, because they're they're victims
Mm-hmm.
generally. Generally speaking, they're a victim. It's someone who didn't ask for this. Look at David Naughton in American Werewolf in London. Um, it's and that's of course someone asked for werewolf movies. I would say American Werewolf in London, The Howling, two classics, then Dog Soldiers, modern classic, and then for me Ginger Snaps, all three. I love all three Ginger Snaps movies. Um, and then after that, I think you have to start digging.
A little
No,
bit, you do.
no one's going to name an American Werewolf in Paris. I hope.
I
Um,
like that movie. I like it's one of those things. I do like that movie, but I understand people being like that movie. Shit. I have that. I do like bad movies, and I also understand that's a bad movie, and I hate the creature effects in that movie. They look so
See, I
bad.
think that's my biggest problem with it, especially after the amazing effects in the original.
Yeah.
Not to be fair, I've only seen American Werewolf in Paris once. I went to the theater to see it. I was so excited,
Oh. Oh.
and I was traumatized ever since. So maybe I could give it another watch because I do like a good bad movie. Um, M. Night Shyamalan. I'd rather rewatch The Happening than anything else he's done. And that movie's horrible, but I laugh like crazy watching that movie. I'm having a good time. I don't know if I should admit this in public. If I weren't unemployed, although I am going back to work on Monday.
Oh, congratulations.
Well,
Yay.
who knows? I've already been called back once for a day and a half, and then once again 2 weeks later for 9 days. So who knows?
Well,
But yes, but if I were actually working, I was this close to buying Madam Web on Blu-ray. I watched it on Netflix. It's not a good movie, but it entertained the hell out of me.
see, that's the thing. Is that sometimes they're not great. They don't like American Werewolf in Paris. They were trying for John Landis humor without John Landis, and they fail miserably. It's cheesy. The acting is okay, but I don't know. I think I respected that they were going for something different. I think I respected that they decided to shake it up. And I don't know, French skinhead werewolves just kind of did it for me.
If I remember, it's Julie Delpy
Yep.
and Tom Everett Scott,
Yep.
he'll just always be Shades to me from That
From
Thing You Do.
yep.
I see him, I'm like, hey, it's Shades. But and then you have movies like I think it's The Howling 2, where they're using Planet of the Apes costumes for their werewolf.
Yep. Yep.
Um, budgetary But I remember
Yes.
watching that movie when I was stationed in California, when I was in the Air Force, and just not knowing what the hell I was watching.
And that's understandable. That's one of those, I can't help it. I can't help it. I love that movie just because it makes no sense. The storyline is so fucked up, and they got Christopher. They must have bamboozled Christopher Lee to get him in that movie. They must have.
It might be one of those under obligation to the studio. You got to fulfill your obligation. You owe us one more movie. Or it could. I mean, it could be that case, much like Madam Web, where what ended up on screen was nothing at all what he read in the script he was given.
Entirely possible. That whole thing
Entirely.
watches like they were updating it daily. Hey, instead of this, let's do this.
Now I don't know if you watched, because I can't remember everything you talked about during the year of the werewolf. But there's a movie, I believe it's called Bad Wolf, that I believe stars the guy from Cobra Kai, the bad the bad head coach from Karate Kid. Um, and I remember enjoying that movie. If it's even called Bad Wolf, starring that guy, is
I
that
don't
something
believe I
that you?
saw that one. I know the guy. I know his face. I don't believe I saw that one.
I could have him mixed up with somebody else, or I could have the title wrong. But I believe he was somebody's stepfather. It's a big bad wolf. There's a bad wolf. I feel like it was called Bad Wolf, not Big Bad Wolf, but yeah, he was like somebody. The main character was a teenage girl. Richard Tyson. Who's Richard Tyson? Is that the guy from?
I
Who
don't
looks
know.
like the
I
guy
don't
from
know. I don't know the name. I know his face.
Black
It's one
Hawk
of those.
Down? It might not be the guy from Karate Kid. He just looks like him. Like, see if I can get this. Come on, get his picture to come. It's this guy. Again, I don't know how well you'll be able to see that picture.
Isn't that the guy from Kindergarten Cop?
He
Isn't wasn't
is.
he the bad guy from Kindergarten Cop?
He is from Kindergarten Cop. Yeah, so Big Bad Wolf. After being attacked by a werewolf, a teenager believing it may have been his it's a guy, a kid. His stepfather attempts to expose him. So it's called Big Bad Wolf 2006. I thought that was pretty good.
I honestly don't know. I don't think I saw that one. But again, my list wasn't comprehensive, but I'm open to adding more.
What, if you can recall, what were like the top three of the werewolf movies you watched?
So there was a French one called Where. It's just WER. I think it was French. And it was one where it wasn't super monstery. I actually watched a lot of werewolf movies where they didn't do a lot of creature effects. They really were just guys that they put teeth and claws in their mouths, and the guys would go rawr. And depending on the cheese factor of the movie, they literally would, come up to the camera and go rawr. Or like in this movie, which was a little more highbrow, um, they there was a lot of lighting and a lot of mood set to it, and it actually was a fantastic monster movie while also not having much of a monster in reference to creature effects. In the our beloved werewolf movies, we got that, big camera pull out and we get to watch the transformation. That's always kind of like the money shot of a werewolf movie. And I love them. This one didn't have that. And yet it was still kind of amazing. It was brutal and violent, but also it told this fantastic story. Um, Another one was a movie called Howl, and that one takes place on a train. Think Train to Busan, but in the woods and werewolves.
Okay.
And then there was one called It's got such a simple name, and I'm going to mess it up. I referenced it so many times in my videos because this movie made me laugh so hard on purpose. It did it right. I think it was called Werewolf of England. And this company, this production company that made this movie, made like 3 or 4 movies that I watched that were actually okay. But this one in particular was incredible. They didn't show werewolf transformations, but they also didn't give me CGI monsters. They were guys in fursuits, but the difference between CGI and the guys in the furry suits is that presence that they take up in the atmosphere of the screen. The other actors react to it differently. And it, if you never thought you would see a werewolf movie where a werewolf has sick diarrhea all over a guy's head,
All right.
that's included in that. There was also a movie called Viking Wolf. Now, it did have the CGI wolf, but it was good. It was a very good, solid werewolf movie.
There was, excuse me, there's a friend of mine who hosts on Saturday nights Bad Movie Night in Cyberspace. And I wish I could remember the name of this movie, but this was maybe years ago. There was a werewolf movie where almost all of the backgrounds were green screen, and the werewolves had like black bodysuits and then just black paint on their faces with a little bit of hair. And then I don't remember if their hands were painted black with just a little bit of hair and then some claws. And it's one of those, because everything is green screen, it just looks fake. There's no sense of weight to anything, because they're not actually interacting with anything. They're not actually standing on the forest floor, you know. Terrible, terrible, low budget movie, but worth a watch. We always have fun in Bad Movie Night in Cyberspace. We don't always watch bad movies.
Those kinds of movies are always great to watch with friends. It's one thing to watch it alone and laugh, but ultimately be like, ah. But when you're with friends and you can have conversations about the actual crap that's on the screen, it's so fun.
Yeah, there's a chat, on the side of the screen as we're all watching it. All these people from all over the country have come together online to watch these bad movies. A lot of asylum films we've watched.
Oh God, yeah.
But then, like, what was it, New Year's, we watched Die Hard and had it timed perfectly so that when the ball drops is when Hans Gruber drops. Spoilers: Hans Gruber falls from the Nakatomi Plaza Tower. So we watched movies like that. There was someone had requested the Tim Burton Batman movies. So we will watch decent movies. We do watch some that are so bad they're good. But some of them are just bad.
Yeah,
Just
some of
bad.
them are just bad.
And it's the experience of sharing it with somebody. So the books that you read, I think I know the answer to this. We'll just jump right in. Favorite werewolf books that you read during the year of the werewolf?
The book we're going to talk about today, I actually read before, years before. And what's weird about that, we'll circle back around, is despite all the books that I read during the year of the werewolf, when people ask me now, well, what's one book you recommend? I recommend today's book. Because out of all the books that I read, and I liked, I really liked a lot of these books. Out of all of those books, the one we're going to talk about tonight, I think because of the point of view and because honestly the ending, it nails the ending. Because of that, I think it's the best one, even for people who don't necessarily love monster stories. They're going to like this one. So the one that sticks out to me the most that I really liked last year was called The Beasts of Visaria County by Douglas Ford. It's like a multi-monster book. It's not just werewolves, but I thought it was a great story. I really enjoyed that one.
Not what I expected.
I honestly, I didn't bone up for this. If you, I don't remember a lot of the books that I read last year. I remember the Howling trilogy just because I hate those books. Those books.
Which I think I might have them on my Kindle when they were like free.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall, but I've never read them. It is a trilogy that I thought you were going to say was your favorite,
I hate those books.
but not The Howling. It was a different trilogy.
Oh, the Jeff Strand books, Wolf
Yes.
Hunt. Yes, those books, I read them towards the end of the year because I got into a bad place with the books, especially after I reread the Howling trilogy by Gary Brandner. He doesn't need me. He's fine
Yeah.
without my good opinion. So I had read them. I think I got them for free on my Kindle years and years back, and I'd read them, and I just remembered being like, no, I hate these. And the more I started thinking about it, it's like these are important books to that werewolf genre. I should give them another try. And I was able to have a softer opinion about the first book. The first book, most people are going to go into this book having watched the movie. And it's going to spoil something very important about the first book that if you're not spoiled by the movie, this is a huge revelation in the book. And I was able to understand how this was spoiled for me, and how if I'd had fresh eyes on the entire story and not seen the movie, this would have been a huge deal. But then the second and third books, I hate those books so much.
With the first one, is it a case of the movie being better than the book?
The movie is different. The Joe Dante, they, in the course of making all those Howling movies, they made another one called Back to the Beginning or the
Mm-hmm.
original, something like that, and they
Yeah.
based it more on the book. It's still not right, but it's more based on the book. The Joe Dante movie is not, it has that element to it, but it's not, it's very loosely
Okay.
based on the book.
All right. But Jeff Strand brought you out of this darkness.
Yes, yes, because he wrote this trilogy about two. They're kind of like mafia wise guys. They're the roughnecks that come and they break your
The leg
kneecaps.
breakers.
Yep. And these books were so fast paced and so brutal and so adrenaline filled, and they're not short books either. So much happens in all three of them, and he goes to places where you don't think he'll go with main characters and stuff, and I adored it. I adored, they're not from the point of view of the werewolf. They are absolute adversaries of the werewolves. The
Yes.
werewolves are 100% assholes in these books. Um, but I loved them. I adored the story. I adored the creature. Perfect.
I love the first two, and I don't know if I was fatigued when I read the third one. I did not rate it nearly as high, and I don't know, at the point that I read it, it seemed like, I mean, all the characters were there, all the comedy was there, but it felt very samey
Mm-hmm.
to me, and it felt like, I think in my review I said, with definitely one, maybe two exceptions, it didn't feel like anyone had a unique voice. It was all just snappy dialogue.
Okay,
And
I can see that. Yep.
um, so, and again, it could be I was just burned out at the time I read it. Although I did read them as they came out, so there was quite a separation between reading each one. Um, but yeah, they are hilarious. The characters, it's Lou, right? And I can't remember the name of the. I want to say Frank and Lou, but I'm
I don't
not.
remember. I think Lou definitely. I don't think it's Frank though. I can't remember though.
But yeah, they're great characters, and that first book is just fantastic.
That
I
first
think
book
the
is.
first one is the best one.
I will agree with that. I agree with that.
But yeah, that's what I thought you would say, because I feel like in your videos you were like, this is it.
They came at the perfect time because I was very tired of werewolves when I started reading these books, and they helped kind of sweeten the whole monster thing for me again.
Well, I get that way relatively recent. I can't remember. I read a book that was fantastic, but so dark that I had to find something light to read after it. I had planned on reading something else, and I was like, no, I need a comic book novel or a comedy novel, something that's to counteract the horrible darkness, wonderful horrible darkness of this book that I just read. Sometimes you got to break it up.
You do. You really do. You have to have your backup books that you can go to, because sometimes horror breaks you a little bit and you gotta heal.
Although, I mean, if you were to look around here, I don't know, at least it's got to be 75% horror.
Yeah.
All of these books, maybe a little less, but I have a shit ton of comic book novels, and then some mystery and fantasy and science fiction and all that, all sorts of comedy stuff, all sorts of stuff. Actually, and science fiction horror. Speaking of people like Mary Sangiovanni, who you mentioned much earlier, I've got her Aliens novel over there, which was fantastic.
Book.
And all her other stuff is in a different room. I have a side. I have a few shelves in another room for the spillover of all the books that I have. But yeah, horror, sci-fi. And he thought, just since I brought it up, what are your feelings on sci-fi horror or horror sci-fi?
I'm not a huge fan of sci-fi on its own. Um, just because sci-fi has a tendency to always kind of lean into being dystopian. And I don't love dystopian. I do like when sci-fi gets into monsters, though. That's why I like the Alien movies. It's a great monster.
Yeah,
But
it's my favorite. I love favorite of the like aliens type monsters,
yeah,
monsters, the xenomorphs, beautiful creatures.
absolutely. Beautiful cycle, that whole brutal cycle and how they're able to be born. It's so smart. The whole sci-fi thing, if it's recommended to me, I'll give it a try. And more often than not, I do like it. It's not my thing on the whole, just because of that whole dystopian thing. That's one of those things. I think I've just got a big red button that says this is not for you. This is going to mess you up.
So, are you not a fan of the zombie subgenre in general?
Nope.
Alrighty. Well, I mean, I guess it seems rather obvious. If we were to take werewolves off the table, what would be your favorite subgenre of horror?
Haunted houses.
Okay. What's the best haunted house book you've ever read?
There isn't one. One of my favorites is definitely Hell House.
The Richard Matheson.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, not The Haunting of Hill House.
No. Which is that's a good one. It's not. I wouldn't say it's even in my top 10, but it's a good one. I love the haunted house thing because I'm a homebody. My home is my safe space. It is. I feel like everything about me is in my house, and the thought of having that space sort of perverted by an outside influence that's soaking into everything and I can't control it, I can't fight it, I'm helpless, that scares me. And so that kind of book hits me in that, that perfect tickle spot.
Yeah, Hell House is great. I actually want to pick up the Tor Nightfire edition. Because I have almost all of the books published by Tor Nightfire. They're reprinting Brian Lumley's Necroscope series.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, and I don't like them. I read Necroscope way back in the day, and maybe the second one, not a fan. So I'm not picking up those new editions.
I'm so glad somebody else thinks that, because I read Necroscope and I was into it until like the last 10% of the book. It turns into something completely different. And
I just not a fan of his writing style. I don't know. But yeah, so not into those. And they just 4 or 5 or 6 books back did a new edition of Hell House. And so I feel a nice hardback edition. I believe it's hardback. So I decided I'm going to get that. Keep my Nightfire collection semi-complete, minus the Brian Lumley. So I've already given the copy of Hell House that I did have, gave it to my nephew. But I have yet to pick.
Your
Have
nephew's
yet to
got a nice
actually.
collection.
What's that?
Your nephew's got a nice collection.
Well, we have similar enough tastes, not in all of our reading, but if I buy a new edition of something because I like the cover better or want to have it part of a collection, I'll give him the old copy I had. Mike Lombardo's Don't Tap on the Glass.
Mm-hmm.
I bought the paperback as soon as it was available. And then once the hardbacks came out, I bought one from him. So it was signed and everything. Gave the paperback to my nephew. Or because I'm old and my memory is terrible, every once in a while I buy a book I already have.
I do that too. I recently redid my bookshelves and I had like 3 of the same book by John Bowden. So, and the horrible thing is they were all signed because I'm friends with John.
Yeah.
So I need to remember to reach out to him and be like, look, if somebody says like, hey, I found this at a secondhand bookstore, it's signed to Somer Canon, I still have one. I had multiples. Don't get mad at me.
Yeah, for me it's usually if it's a big series of something. For me it's a lot of the pulps like Doc Savage and The Shadow, even the Conan the Barbarian books. There's just so many. It's hard for me to remember. So I actually take pictures before I go to like half price books. I'll take pictures of the books so I can, if I run across some at the store, I can, oh, no, I already have that one. But sometimes I forget, and then I don't want to, if I see one, I don't want to pass it up because it's not going to be there the next time I go. So I do pick up some things and then go, oh, I already have this. Stephen King is kind of getting that way as I'm trying to fill in that missing gap.
Mm-hmm.
And then did I pick up Revival? Or was I just going to and I didn't do it yet? I can't remember now if I picked it up. It's like, there's one here. I got to grab it. And then I come home and go, oh, yeah, there it is right there on the shelf. I already have a copy of that. Give it to the nephew. That's how he gets stuff. I give him comic books. Keeps him reading. Yeah, so let's see. We were talking about Aliens, which are awesome. I just read one of the earlier Titan books, Aliens novels, that I thought was fantastic. The Cold Forge by Alex White. Really, really enjoyed that one. But yeah, the xenomorphs are a beautiful creature, and that's a great science fiction horror.
And the universe is interesting too because there's also a lot of intrigue behind the Weyland-Yutani Corporation protecting this species and trying to propagate it in different places. It's not just monsters. There's all this human fuckery that comes with it.
There's always human fuckery. That's one of the things I really liked about V. Castro's book, Vasquez, is that, we're following this family of a character from one of the movies, and a lot of it is the two paths that they take. And a lot of it has to do with Weyland-Yutani because one of them goes the Weyland-Yutani route, the other one is trying to go the Colonial Marines route. And so I like seeing different aspects of that world. And then I just like seeing xenomorphs eat people.
Yeah.
Because that somewhat falls into my favorite subgenre of horror, which is animals eating people.
Animals eating people. That's a great one, though.
That's what I want. I just reread The Nest, which is cockroaches killing people. And then you got, the rats by James Herbert and Slugs by Sean Hudson and of course Jaws, which we talked about
Yep.
in an earlier interview. And I just recently read Orca, um, based on the
I
movie.
I really want to read Orca because I that's another one. I love that movie. It's so messed up and also so bad in parts. Like everybody remembers the scene of the miscarriage on the boat. And but I always think of um when they're on the island and they're in that little house and the orca is just wrecking this house and it bites Bo Derek's leg off. That's where I always go.
I've actually not seen the movie.
I'm
I never,
sorry.
well,
Oh
I've read the book,
no. I'm
so
sorry.
I mean I know what happens because I read the book. And I actually, in my review, I did say I was comparing it a little bit to Jaws, and I did say the big advantage it has over Jaws is you don't take a quarter of the book detour into someone's affair with
Ugh.
somebody else. Um, but yeah, I very much enjoyed the book, and the same author wrote the novelization of the Killer Bee movie Swarm, which I haven't read yet. Um, And then I guess Encyclopocalypse is putting out a novelization of Squirm, the killer worm movie.
Oh god.
Um, and that's, I just eat it up. I want animals killing people.
Do you read Hunter Shea?
Oh, of course.
He wrote I think his book is called Orcas. He wrote one about killer whales. There's
Which I haven't read yet. I have all his stuff buried back there, but that's one I haven't read all of it yet.
it's a fun one.
But his Tortures of the Damned, I want to say, is one of the mass market paperbacks that he had. Um, and that's my favorite one, and it's got plenty of killer animals in it. Um, but yeah, but werewolves. I am a big fan of werewolves. Always have been. I grew up watching. I remember possibly the first werewolf movie I ever saw was I Was a Teenage Werewolf,
Okay. Michael
and
Landon.
I'm pretty sure the first R-rated movie I ever saw in theaters was American Werewolf in London. Um, yeah, always been a fan. One of my favorite comic book characters or comic books, Werewolf by Night. Good old Jack Russell. Great name for a werewolf.
It is.
Um, yeah, and I think it is that tragic, generally that they're a tragic character.
hmm
But then I've also read like the a ton of the White Wolf Publishing Werewolf the Apocalypse role-playing game novels where they're the main characters. They're not tragic. It's just their way of life.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't necessarily love the ones where it's like we're actually a secret society. We exist in the normal world. I want it to be more monster, more of a personal level, not so much a critique on society.
I did enjoy the Kelly Armstrong books. Um, forget what they call the Otherworld series, and the first few. Well, overall, the thing I liked about the whole series in general was she would use a character in like the first two books, and then the next two books, the main character was a secondary character from the earlier books, and then she'd
Oh,
take
that's
another
neat.
secondary character and show us their story, and then continue that on. But the first few were werewolves. So there's and it was made into a series on Sci-Fi that I want to say it was called Bitten, but yeah. So the first few were werewolves, but it was that sort of not a whole society, but someone does is a werewolf. The main character is a werewolf, and there are other werewolves that they're a part of, but it's not a worldwide sort of story.
hmm
And then I can't remember what the next type of creature was. I know there's some witch books in there in the mix. Yeah, but I liked that taking a secondary character and making them the main character later, and just sort of expanding this world with different characters and different types of creatures.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the first few were werewolves, and I enjoyed them. It's Kelly Armstrong's book, if you want to look those up. I don't know if you've read anything by her.
No, I haven't.
All right. Well, maybe it's time, unless anything else about the Year of the Werewolf.
No. I'm glad
Okay.
it's over.
Well, we're going to jump into the main feature here, and I want to tell people there's going to be lots of spoilers. So, seriously, folks, if you don't want this spoiled, and I recommend you don't be spoiled here, pause this video. Just pause it. Don't even turn it off. Just pause it. Read the book, and then come back and watch the rest of the video. I highly, highly recommend this book. I haven't recorded my review yet, so they're special preview for people. So what did you pick for your favorite horror for this episode?
Thor by Wayne Smith. This is the book. When people ask me what werewolf book should I read, this is the book that I recommend to everybody.
So when you chose this, I had to buy a copy as quickly as I could. This, I think, is from Amazon's publishing branch.
Mm-hmm.
They have like 7 little sub-publishers depending on the genre. Because there's no copyright page. There's no about the author info. It's just, that's the back cover. That's the front cover. And then it just jumps into the book. So
I think this book was out of print for a while, because when I first read it, I could only get it in ebook, or I could go and try to find the secondhand version with that really cheesy drawing of the German Shepherd on the cover. It's got like a seafoam green cover with a German Shepherd in the mist.
I think I want to find one of those. A copy of it. If I can find an actual like mass market paperback old copy of it, I'll get that, and I'll just give this to my nephew. So this was your choice. Before we deep dive into it, can you give us a quick synopsis?
The book is from mostly, not totally, but mostly through the point of view of the family pet named Thor. He's a German Shepherd dog. He, as most German Shepherds are, he's very protective of his family, very protective of his area. And turns out there's a werewolf in the family. And the dog has to learn to live with or deal with this werewolf.
Very nice. All right. And so why, again, very quickly, before we deep dive, well, I guess you've already said why you chose this, because this is your favorite. Okay. One of the things I liked about this, as you said, a huge chunk of it is told from the dog's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that it doesn't anthropomorphize the dog. This isn't Scooby-Doo.
No.
Or anything like that. And there is a point where it clearly says Thor doesn't understand words. He recognizes words, but he doesn't understand them. He doesn't think in words. Even though we're in his head, we are told that, he's not thinking the way people think.
Yeah.
And I like that.
I would like to say that there are 2 words that he does know, and they're the thing that makes him the most frightened. He's scared to death of hearing the words bad dog.
But again, I think he recognizes those words and what they, I don't want to say mean, because he doesn't know what the words bad dog means.
He knows
what
the feelings.
convey.
Yeah, he knows what the the person saying them is feeling, and that they make him feel a certain way.
Yes. Yes. Um, so I mean, we start with what I call a cold open from essentially a bear's perspective, which I thought was interesting.
It's when we think about the werewolf, about the dichotomy between humanity and animal instinct, and the change between losing your humanity in order to become all animal. It's neat that a book was written so much from the point of view of animals. And when we're in an animal's head in this, it's very sensory heavy. It's a
Hmm.
lot of smells, it's a lot of sounds, it's a lot of almost intuition of danger from
Hmm.
these animals. And it's just a unique storytelling style.
It was, and I was concerned about that because I'd heard you talk about it. I've heard you talk about it before, and I was like, oh, it's the dog's point of view. What is this going to be like? But holy cow,
Mm,
it works. Um, and so we have that cold open with the bear finding food, and then um, the little twist at the end of the cold open that it's a human. They
yep.
found a dead, torn up human. Um, and then we jump to Thor, who lives with, I don't know why my eyes are so itchy, um, lives with mom and dad, and then three kids, 12-year-old Teddy, 8-year-old Brett, and 4-year-old,
The
whatever the
girl is
name is, Debbie
she's a
Owens.
little, yeah.
Um, and yeah, so we're with Thor, and we're learning about the pack, Thor's pack, and the
Hmm.
hierarchy and everything. And again, I think it's when they're talking about going to the beach, and he doesn't know the word beach. He doesn't know what it means. He knows that sound beach means a certain thing. That they're going. He's excited because they're going to a place that he likes, and that's indicated by the noise beach. Um, and then we get the con man and all that stuff, and just really really interesting.
It and you're right, this could have been done in a way that was just corny and cheesy. But because I don't know, because it was done in earnest like this, and because Thor is so earnest and everything he does is well intentioned, even when it is dumb doggy stuff. And he knows when he's doing dumb doggy stuff. He's so earnest. He only wants to be a good boy. He only wants to protect his family. Even when, like, there's a little bit in there when the boys are picking on him and they piss him off, he bites the buttons off their shirts and then the boys
Yes.
get in trouble. I love that bit.
Yeah.
And it's because it's so earnest, because Thor is so sincere as an animal. And if you're an animal lover at all, this book is going to wreck you. But it's so endearing.
And I love that, there he we have the pack. Mom and dad are the mating pair, and
Hmm.
they outrank Thor. But Thor outranks the kids. And Teddy, being 12 years old, his attitude is changing. They used to be best friends, but now, Teddy doesn't want to take him for a walk, doesn't want to feed him. But Thor, I love that he's like, but he doesn't outrank me in the pack, so and I'm paraphrasing because Thor does not talk like this in the book or think like this, but he's basically like, screw him. I don't have to do what he says. He doesn't. I outrank him in the pack until he becomes a man. I outrank him.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, just fantastic. And I like that, like the telephone. I forget how he describes it. The little box that they poke, and he doesn't. He's confused because they're talking to this thing as if it's Uncle Ted, but it's not Uncle Ted. It's this little box.
And you picture like you've been doing something and had a dog sit and look at you with its head tilted to the side, like, what are you doing? You can picture that in your head when you're reading that.
And through the telephone, essentially, we're introduced to Uncle Ted.
Uncle Ted.
And spoilers, folks, we are going to talk about a movie that's based on this book. So Uncle Ted, and then they have to call them, it's like Big Ted and Little Ted, because now you have two characters named Ted in the book.
Yep.
And I like, again, that it's just, we just learn that Ted, he's a photographer, very well enough off that he doesn't have to work.
Yep.
And he was in Nepal with his girlfriend. She disappeared. He was savaged. And he has told the authorities something attacked us and dragged her off. And that's all we know of his backstory, essentially.
Yep.
But of course, we know what type of book we're reading. And yeah, and then so Thor, who loves Uncle Ted, his favorite person, who's not an immediate member of the pack, and yet now notices something different about Uncle Ted.
And it's that whole animal thing. There's a smell. There's just something off. It's still Uncle Ted. At first, he's still like, "Oh, you're still Uncle Ted," but what is that?
Well, I do like, and again, this is why I warned people of spoilers. I like I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when he has smelled the bad thing, the wild thing, the bad animal, and there's a point where he's following Uncle Ted, and he's following Uncle Ted's scent into the woods, and Uncle Ted's scent is getting weaker, and the scent of the bad animal is getting stronger, and then there's a point where Uncle Ted's scent just disappears. And it's just the bad animal. And Thor is so confused by this. But it's so well written. And it's so easy to understand what Thor is feeling. For lack of a better way to put it.
When we're also at the point of view of an animal, like he sees something in Ted's house that a human would flip out over. And it's just curious to Thor. And he's just like, why would he keep that there? Okay, well, I'm not supposed to eat that myself, so I'm going to back up, because something that I don't know, I think about it a lot, because I read this book years and years and years ago. It just lives in my head now, though. I think about how he's just called Dad in this, how Dad trained Thor not to eat strange things that he finds, because their house is right by the woods. They go walking through the woods all the time. Mom goes running through the woods. Thor is in the woods a lot. And Dad has, like, he'll take steaks and just soak them in oil, like chili oil. And if Thor eats it, he gets very, very sick. And there was this long process of training Thor. You don't eat things that you just find. So when he finds this, what is it, a heart in like Ted's laundry hamper?
No, I don't think he finds anything like that in Ted's place.
I thought he did.
He finds the hiker, the dead hiker, around
that might be property. And it's just
he finds curious. The handcuffs because of the bad animal smell on the handcuffs. But well, in that part with the meat, because when he finds the dead hiker, the liver is still there, and the liver's the best part. But
that must be what
goes into how he learned not to eat the meat. And at first I didn't know. I thought someone else was like just trying to poison animals or something. But then it explains a little bit later. Dad actually says someone was poisoning animals, leaving meat out and poisoning animals. So I had to train Thor with this pepper-fueled meat. It took him a few tries, and it describes when Thor thinks about it. He ate the meat and just had this burning sensation, and the water didn't help. Things didn't help. He got over it. They went out again one time. He found meat in the same spot, ate that, burning sensation. I think it only took like 2 times for
He's
him
a
to
quick
learn.
learner.
Yeah, very smart dog. Yeah, so that's why, like, he didn't just dig into the hiker's carcass to eat that liver, because everybody loves even the bear thinks the liver's the best part.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, just and the characters, the adults do have names, but Thor just doesn't think of the name. They're just mom, dad, the mating pair. I don't remember their names. I remember the kids' names: Teddy, Brett, and again, I think it's Debbie. And of course, Uncle Ted. I don't remember the parents' names, but it and so you have this growing tension because they think the mom and dad think that Ted is upset because of what happened to Marjorie, and they don't have the senses that Thor has. Thor knows there's something wrong with Uncle Ted, and so that creates tension in the family and tension with. Oh, it's so sad when Thor has to. He's fighting between, well, natural law and pack law, essentially.
Mhm.
That's how he describes it. And yeah, when he's, oh, bad dog, so horrible.
The devastation he feels when dad says bad dog and he has to go down to the basement. The
Yeah.
devastate, like, it's not just like, aw, it's his whole world crumbles when he hears those words.
And then he he sees Uncle Ted, well, he sees the werewolf chained to a tree at one point. And then he eventually comes to understand that it's Uncle Ted, and he has to be a bad dog to protect the pack, and so he attacks Uncle Ted in his Uncle Ted form.
Mhm.
And that's when, oh, so terrible what happens. Oh, it's devastating, but it
It
does lead
is.
to the climax of the story.
The climax of the story is amazing, and it's because he's just like hell bent on protecting the family. That is his number one thing. He knows he's a bad dog. Like, that's his rationale. I am a bad dog, but I am also going to protect them, even if it makes me a bad dog. And he goes into this depression. That ending, I
Oh,
read it, I bawled. I bawled. I went to my mom, and my mom's a big horror fan. I was like, read this book. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. Just read it. And she came back to me very close to what you did and was like, why did you have me read that? I cried.
yeah. If you're an animal lover, and I prefer animals to people. Let's be honest. Um, although if asked, if someone says, cat person or dog person, I do say cat person
I'm a cat person.
because cats are little bastards.
Yeah.
I love little bastards like me. But I do love dogs as well. And so, yes, being in Thor's head when he's going through this, being a bad dog and not believing that he's worthy of forgiveness
Mm-hmm.
is, and the behavior described looks like, or, was described as behavior I have seen.
Yep.
So it's very realistic that way. I thought of trying to make light of it and saying there should have been Sarah McLachlan music playing. But it's heart wrenching.
It is.
Those last however many. This book doesn't have page numbers. That's how crazy this copy is. So I
Uh,
can't even say how many of the last 20 pages. I don't know because there's no page numbers. But so yeah, I do think it builds up slowly, but at no point is it slow, in my opinion.
no, not at
It's
all.
it's a compelling story. but it's quite a while till we get to the werewolf stuff.
Yeah.
And if you don't know going in that that's what it is, it's quite a while. Yeah, we get to a point where we're okay, something's up with Uncle Ted, something's going on, but it's still even more time goes by before we know it's a werewolf. Which I liked.
It's almost subtle because so many of these books, well, we're used to. I'm not going to say this is a bad thing. We're just very used to everything being through the point of view of a person. And a person in their mind is going to rationalize a lot of things. They're going to try to explain away a lot of things. And Thor doesn't. Thor understands immediately and accepts it immediately. And, you know, everything is always dripping with human emotion, human confusion. Not like that with Thor. Thor is actually he's conflicted, but not confused. He doesn't fight with himself. He doesn't, he's not trying to skirt past logic like humans tend to do.
Excuse me. Well, see, I would disagree a little bit. I think there is some confusion and conflict in him because Uncle Ted is part of the pack. Uncle Ted is one of his best friends, but there's something wrong with Uncle Ted and is confused by the conflicting sense that he's getting between Uncle Ted and the bad animal.
And I think that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. But he accepts it a lot faster than a person would.
Oh, absolutely.
A person's going to try to explain a lot of that away. A person like his sister is always going to be going, no, not Ted, not Ted. Thor's like, Ted, yeah.
No, Ted's just upset because of what happened to Marjorie, his girlfriend. But so many things to talk about with the movie. But so anything else about the book before we jump into the movie?
I recommend it to everybody, even people who aren't maybe super into, like, I even think non-horror fans would like this book. It's not super, like, there is gore, there is a monster, there's body parts, but being from the points of view that it's almost impersonal sometimes. You know, if a human sees a dead human body, there's a set of emotions that comes with it that we don't get when it's viewed through an animal, which is strange, but also extremely interesting. And then 100% read this book for the ending.
Yes. Again, spoilers, since I haven't recorded the review yet, and this video is going to go up before my review, I gave it 5 out of 5. I absolutely loved it. So yes, hopefully people have paused the video 20 minutes ago and read the book before we spoiled all of it. So when you chose this, you also mentioned there's a movie based on the book called Bad Moon. I forgot to look at the date that it came out. It stars Muriel Hemingway and Michael Paré.
And Mason Gamble as the kid.
And written and directed by Eric Red.
Eric Red. Fun fact, I very, very, very briefly shared a publisher with Eric Red.
Interesting. He has written 2 of my favorite movies. Another movie that I really, really enjoy. A lot of people think is bad. And then some other stuff. But The Hitcher.
The Hitcher.
Absolutely love that movie. One of 1996 is when Bad Moon came out. The Hitcher is one of 2 movies that literally had me jumping up in my seat at a certain point in shock.
Yeah.
And then my favorite vampire movie, Near Dark, wrote that. And then I'm a big fan of Body Parts. I don't know how other people feel about it. It was on the podcast, How Did This Get Made? They weren't happy with it. But I saw it in the theater. It's got Jeff Fahey, Brad Dourif, a murderer's arm given to somebody else, but it wants to keep murdering. What's not to love? So yeah, Eric Red, but I have to say I don't think in his prime with this movie.
I agree. This is a movie that I like, but I think I like it because of how much I make fun of it. The problem is, I think, truly, is that actors aren't at their best in this. And we got good actors. Michael Paré is usually a great actor, and he's not bad in this. I think it's Mariel Hemingway who's the stinker in this, if we're being completely honest.
I was reading some trivia on IMDb, and apparently on the commentary track, Eric Red talks about how she just sucked.
Yeah.
And he said she's a great actress.
She is.
Wasn't bringing it at all. And so right off the bat in this movie, we only have mother and son.
Yeah.
And Thor. So dad, one of the sons, and the daughter completely gone. Now, I thought a few times throughout this movie that a lot of things were done because of budget. 2 actors instead of 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then Uncle Ted is living, in an Airstream trailer instead of this beautiful A-frame. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, budget.
Yeah.
They don't have to build or find and rent a beautiful A-frame. They just have this.
Which is weird because it takes place in Washington State. There are so many A-frame cabins up there. So many. I used to live there.
Well, allegedly, according to the trivia, which is, again, allegedly taken from the director's commentary, he shrunk the family down for a greater sense of urgency in the tension, and the Airstream is supposed to represent a silver bullet.
Oh, PU.
So, yeah.
Don't beat us over the head with it.
But my question for you, did you see the theatrical or the regular cut or the director's cut?
I have no idea. I'm sure I'm just seeing the theatrical cut.
The director's cut is actually missing something that apparently Eric Red hated, which is the transformation scene.
Which is awful.
So you did see that. You saw the regular cut with that.
The thing is, they at least bothered with the transformation scene. That they're building up to it when he's out there in the woods and he is slowly changing, and they've got the makeup going on Michael Paré. They've put the big brow on him. He's got the teeth and the yellow contact lenses in. They're changing him, but then that weird, it's very weird. Terrible, it's almost like stop motion.
Terrible morphing CGI.
Yep.
Very much like the infamous scene in Sleepwalkers.
Oh God.
Which is a movie I love. But that scene in Sleepwalkers where his face morphs. It's that Michael Jackson, was it the black and white video where the faces kept changing, and everybody was like, "That's amazing. We have to put it in our movie." But yeah, that transformation scene, and it was so like we see the werewolf standing there, and like his right shoulder and arm change, and then his left shoulder and arm change, and then part of his head changes, and but aside from that, what did you think of the werewolf makeup itself?
As long as it isn't, so it's a guy in a suit. It's not full animatronic. When it's moving and they're doing shots of it, like long shots of it moving, it looks great. It's a huge berserker angry werewolf. The problem is when they do the face shots of it, because, and again, it's not terrible. Trust me, I've seen terrible. It's
not Planet of the Apes costume.
No, It does look a little bit like an animatronic at a pizza place. It looks like it should be
Yeah,
playing banjo for Rock a Fire
the jaw
Explosion.
moving.
The mouth and the way it blinks and the way its ears move, it's very animatronic.
One of the interesting, right off the bat, they changed the movie up by the cold open is the werewolf attack
Yep.
on Uncle Ted and Marjorie and some other people.
Yeah.
I don't think they're in Nepal.
No, they're in South America, I
Yeah,
think.
it seems like a South American jungle. And so we actually see Marjorie get killed. We see him getting wounded. And then again, folks, spoilers, blowing blowing the werewolf's head off with a shotgun. Um so there's none of that mystery that you would have in the book if you didn't read stuff about it ahead of time or watch us talk about it, because we just have that. And then we do get the introduction of Thor and Muriel Hemingway's character and her kid, who he's Brett, which is the 8-year-old, but I think it's supposed to be an older kid.
He's not 8. He's older than that.
Yeah, because Teddy was 12, and I was like, is he supposed to be Teddy at 12? But they didn't want to have two people named Ted, so they just made him the Brett character. I mean, I don't have kids. All kids are 8 years old to me. Um, and they even have we didn't talk about this in the book too much, but the con man,
The
Flopsy,
Flopsy.
that
Yep.
shows up, although they've changed what happens with him. And in the book, it's Dad who's a lawyer. So this guy walks up the street to the house with Thor, and he's like selling something, but he basically gets Thor to attack him so he can sue
Yeah.
or threaten to sue, so they'll give him money to go away. But in the book, Dad's a lawyer, and he's like, I know you're a flopper, the kind of person that throws themselves in front of a car or falls in the grocery store or whatever, blah, 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 blah. In the movie, it's Muriel Hemingway, who's a lawyer. And it's just a little, in the book, it's just a little thing that's causing some tension in the family, because they're concerned that this guy's going to come back and try to have Thor put down because he didn't get his way. But in here, he becomes a victim of the werewolf in the movie.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So some interesting changes. I don't know, good or bad. And I don't know if there were editing problems, because the Uncle Ted's speech to Muriel Hemingway when she catches him in the woods didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Because she invites him to stay, and he's like, okay, sure. Especially since the cops are now investigating around his airstream because a body was found.
He keeps saying it'll do my heart good,
Yes.
because they do like a little search through his airstream, and he's been doing the thing that they always do in werewolf movies, which is researching werewolves. They all have the same book. In every movie they have the same book. But she also, that really messed up part is she finds the photos. He took photos of Marjorie after she's torn apart by the werewolf, and she finds the photos and she's like, oh shit.
And she asks him later, she's like, if I ask you a question, you'll tell me the truth, right? He's like, yeah. She's like, where's Marjorie? This is after she's seen the photos. She says, where's Marjorie? And he says, Seattle.
Yep.
Which, again, a big difference. They know in the book that Marjorie died.
Yeah.
But she had invited him to come and spend some time at her place. And he's like, yeah, fine. That's great. But then when they're in the woods, when she's caught him, he's talking about how you kept begging me to come. Like, but she didn't. She asked you once and you said fine.
They start working really fast and really early to make Ted a bad guy.
Yeah.
He's not a warm and cuddly person. He is when they go out to that rocky beach to visit him there before he comes to their place. He's nice, but he's immediately kind of cold, and he's stressed out because Thor is always kind of up his butt, following him everywhere, staring at him. Thor pees on the airstream. and he's kind of stressed about that, but he's not being nice to them either. Like, he comes in one day
Yeah,
for
he's a
breakfast,
dick.
and the kid is sitting there watching a werewolf movie. And he's like, yeah, well, if you blow his head off with a shotgun, he'll be fine. And the kid's like, no, you have to have a silver bullet. And he's just kind of being creepy and ominous. And they
Yeah.
start working really early to make him a bad guy.
And in the book, when there's the big scene where Thor attacks Uncle Ted,
Mm-hmm.
which results in Thor being he's bad boy, put down in the cellar, and then eventually taken to animal control. In the movie, Uncle Ted literally provokes him into attacking him.
Yep.
With the same results, except different, because in the book, and again, it's horribly heart-wrenching, Thor knows he's a bad dog, and when animal control comes, he essentially goes willingly. And Dad has sent everybody away. It's just Dad and the two guys that come to get Thor. They
Mm-hmm.
put a muzzle on him and they take him away, and he calmly goes to their van. And in the movie, two guys come in, put the things around his throat, and he's fighting them.
Yeah.
Trying to get away from them. And Muriel Hemingway's there, the kid is there. So for me, a big emotional change in what's happening with the characters and with Thor.
They're still going for the same thing, but it's cheapened.
Yes. And then, yeah, but just some of again, back to that speech. And I don't know if it was an editing problem, because, things get cut out. And so sometimes this doesn't make sense because the thing that would make it make sense is now gone. But some of the things Uncle Ted said to Muriel Hemingway's character, I can't remember her name, Mom, in the woods as he's changing, just sort of, to me, contradicted his behavior and things that happened, things he said earlier in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the horrendous transformation scene. But yeah, aside from the movie feeling rushed and that horrible transformation scene, I didn't think it was a horrible movie. It's not the worst werewolf movie I've ever seen.
It's not the
Definitely
best. Like,
not
it's
the
not the
best.
best. Its heart is in the right place, and it is, like, because we still get Thor taking care of it, it's still got that interesting twist.
Yes. But it does. I assume, because of the nature of the way the book is written, there are very few quick shots that are supposed to be from Thor's POV.
Mm-hmm.
But because there's so few and quick, I don't think it works. For me, it was more jarring than anything.
If you didn't read the book, if you don't read the book and you don't get that deeper insight into Thor, and you're just, oh, it's just a good dog, the movie hits different. But once you get that deeper understanding of Thor, that deeper understanding of what he's trying to do and how he doesn't want to be a bad dog. Like, in the movie, we get those moments where Thor is just very still and just watching Ted. And it pisses Ted off to no end in the movie. But there's that scene at the end where Thor knows that Ted goes to the woods and handcuffs himself to a tree. Thor has gone out and seen the werewolf trying to get out of the cuffs and just kind of stayed there and watched. There's that scene where he goes out to the woods and finds the handcuffs on the ground and no werewolf, and the dog actor actually yips and takes off running for the house because he knows the werewolf is loose. I think that's a very effective shot right there of emotion from the dog.
It is, but I'm talking about the literal POV shots from the dog's POV.
I'm glad they didn't do that,
They
because
did, though. There are a few of them in there, and it was just annoying.
I'm always scared they're going to do the thing like with Predator,
Yeah.
where because it's an animal, it looks different than what a human sees. So let's put a filter over it.
It wasn't well, I don't know what it was a weird, wonky, almost. The first time you see it is when we're introduced to Thor. He's in the front yard with Brett playing catch, playing with a ball, and uh, Brett has thrown the ball. Thor catches it, and then Brett starts chasing. Give me the ball back, Thor! Come on, Thor! Give me the ball. And it's just a second of this wonky, almost fish-eyed look at Brett coming towards us, saying, "Give us the ball."
Yeah.
Just for a second. And then it happens a few other times in the movie for just a second. This weird, wonky, oh, look, we're seeing through the dog's eyes. But it's not often enough and not long enough. And the weird wonkiness of it just didn't work.
No.
If we would have like had the camera just being Thor's eyes as he's maybe running through the woods. You know, we don't see Thor. We're seeing his POV without the weird effect or anything. Maybe that, for me anyway, would have worked better than just a split second of this weird, stretched out. This is what a dog's view looks like.
I know what you're talking about, and it moves really fast, so it's hard to kind of cotton on to what you're looking at. I don't know. I'm glad they didn't do it. I'm glad that they refrained because first of all they got beautiful dogs to play Thor, and it was nice to look at the dogs if I'm being perfectly honest. But it does lack a lot of the emotional potency that the book has.
I will say one of my favorite things. Thor at one point pees on Uncle Ted's Airstream.
Mm-hmm.
Uncle Ted doesn't see it happen, but sees the result.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, Ted goes and pees on Thor's
Doghouse. Yep.
Which reminded me, have you ever read a book? I can't remember if we've talked about this before. There's a book called Howling Mad by Peter David.
I don't think so.
It's about a wolf that gets bitten by a werewolf. And every full moon he becomes human.
Oh God.
And one of the earliest scenes, he's a human, he's wandered into the city, and this kindly woman, takes him home to feed him and whatever. And the first thing he does when he walks into her apartment is starts peeing in the corners.
Oh my God.
Very, very funny book. Very funny book. Howling Mad, Peter David. I recommend it. But yes, so I liked when he peed on Thor's doghouse. I thought that was funny. And yeah, so you talked about when Thor had gone out in the woods, saw the handcuffs with no werewolf in them, and realizes the werewolf's back at the house. That's when the Flopsy guy what was he going to do? Chop up Thor? This guy's got a stake and a meat cleaver.
Yeah, I think he was going to kill Thor. Like, fucking crazy guy.
And then, yeah, so he's at the doghouse, not knowing Thor's an indoor dog. Come here, you stupid dog. And then, of course, the werewolf's right behind him.
There's like a 9-foot tall werewolf behind him. Another thing about that werewolf that I don't want to say I hate, but it kind of isn't my favorite thing is the vocalization of this werewolf. It doesn't growl. It doesn't howl. It doesn't really even scream. It's this very strange, it's almost like it's trying to scream, but all it can get out is air, so it's whispering.
Mm.
And it's got this, the headpiece of the creature, I call it the trapdoor mouth because it doesn't open a little bit, it just falls open. So it's always going, that's what it sounds like. And I don't know, I want a little more animal sound from my werewolves, I guess.
Yeah. There's really not a lot of howling at the moon. Oh, and that's another thing, another difference in the book. It seems to me very clear that it's a full moon thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because Uncle Ted, they've gone to see Uncle Ted at his A-frame, and Thor has found this dead hiker. And then when Uncle Ted comes to live with them, it very clearly says he's been there for about a month before he's gone out now into the woods to chain himself to a tree. Whereas in this, he's not there very long. It's almost immediate. There's no sense of the time that he's been there before he's going out.
Yeah, it does seem nightly because.
And he does tell the kid when the kid's watching Werewolf of London that he says essentially maybe the full moon thing is bullshit. Maybe it's any moon. So that it seems to be, although they keep showing a full moon every night.
They do.
But he seems to be implying that it doesn't have to be a full moon. So I don't know.
That's sloppy writing. That's all that is. That's sloppy. I get the temptation to make it an every night thing because you have to, once you try to get into the nitty gritty of explaining how it works on a lunar cycle, because you don't want to rely on just magical realism, it's hard to explain. So it's just like, yeah, every time it's dark outside, that somehow makes more sense.
Yeah, but the full moon thing is just fun.
It is fun, and that's something, watching all of those werewolf movies last year, you see how the good ones always make use of a beautiful shot of a full moon. Beautiful. The really good ones include the scenery. There's always some sort of trees, or they're doing it through a puddle on the ground. Really, really beautiful shots. Some of them weren't, but some of them were beautiful. There was one movie I watched where they wanted to do the shot of the full moon, but instead they spray painted like a kickball to look like the moon, and that was the shot of the full moon that they did.
Nice. I mean, okay. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about the movie that I wanted to mention, but nothing for me, I don't think. Anything else about Bad Moon?
The book definitely ends better, but I do like how, I know her name, I swear I do. I can't pull it out right now. Mariel Hemingway's character, how she now has this kind of underlying paranoia because Thor fought with the werewolf and was bitten and scratched by the werewolf, that Thor is somehow infected.
I thought of that reading the book, that the author could have gone that way. I didn't know up until the very end whether or not there was going to be some big reveal that Thor is now a monster. And they do play into that with the movie, with the jump scare dream sequence.
Yeah.
Excuse me. All right. So we're good. Bad Moon, Thor, covered everything?
Yep, I think so.
Okay. So anything else you want to say to people watching? Anything you want to recommend? You want to tell people where they can find you? Not like literally, online. All of that, the stuff.
If you're at all interested in the Year of the Werewolf and all that I did, I have a YouTube channel here. I'm sure if you just search my name, Somer Canon, it'll come up.
I'm going to have a link for it in the description.
Thank you very much. You'll find me there. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram. That's actually about it as far as social media goes. But I would like to just really encourage people to just pick up new stuff. Read the stuff, pick up new stuff, because what's amazing is picking up something you know nothing about. Picking up a book, you don't really know the author, you haven't seen too much about it. It's an old book at this point, and loving it. That's such a nice surprise. And I think we need more nice surprises in our lives. And that's a low cost one. Give it a try.
Absolutely. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. As I said, I'm going to have the link for your YouTube channel in the description. I'll have a link for your website in the description, which has a store.
Yep.
And so you can get things from there. You can also go to the Vortex uh, Books and Comics, or Comics and Books, whatever it's called. They have, I think they still have a few more signed copies
Yes, they do.
left over from you that you can order directly from them as long as they last. Um, so yeah, I think we're done, folks. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Somer, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody, put your comments down below or questions or whatever. Please like, share, and subscribe. All that usual YouTube stuff. And um, nobody cares about my social media stuff in these videos. So I think that's it. Until next time, folks, read more old books. Bye-bye, everybody.